What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett, bringing you a preview for the big game of the week out of the Pac-12. It is what you could call a college football playoff decider. There's still a lot to shake out in the entire college football landscape, but the matchup between number 8 Oregon and number 7 Washington in the Pac-12 should be an absolute doozy. It's got two of the top offenses in the country, and I'm going to be breaking down that matchup for you. But before I get into breaking down this huge game, if you go on to enjoy this video, please consider leaving a like, consider subscribing to the channel if you're new, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date on the latest videos. But without further ado, let's dive into this Washington-Oregon game. So it's the marquee matchup of the weekend coming up on Saturday. It pits the number 8 Oregon Ducks against the number 7 Washington Huskies, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 Pacific time in Seattle at Husky Stadium. College game day is going to be there, and there's really no other choice. USC and Notre Dame, going into the season and even after the first couple of weeks, looked like it would be a primetime matchup and showdown, but both of those teams have kind of disappointed a little bit, and this one should be a bit more exciting anyways. As I mentioned kind of in the intro, you've got two of the top 10, but really they're two of the top 3 offenses in college football this year. They're both 1 and 2 in yards per game. Washington is number 1. They're also number 1 in passing yards per game, and then Oregon is number 2 in yards per game. The Ducks are number 2 in points per game, and the Huskies are number 3 nationally in points per game. So both of these offenses are what leads the way in this game, and that's most of what I'm going to be talking about in this one. There's a couple of areas on the defensive side of the ball to keep an eye out for that I'll get into later in this video. But the number one thing is probably the play of both of these quarterbacks. You've got Bo Nix. He's thrown for over 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, and he's been very efficient, very clean with the ball. Just 1 interception on the season for the former Auburn Tiger who's spent the last couple of seasons now in Eugene. And Bo Nix, he's decisive with his throws. He knows where to put the ball. He knows how to get to the right place and to get it to his receivers. The leading one of those is Troy Franklin, 16.7 yards per catch. He has 32 receptions for 535 yards and 7 touchdowns to lead the way. They have kind of three other guys who get the job done. Gary Bryan Jr., 18 for 227 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tez Johnson, 15 for 203 and 3 touchdowns. And Trayshawn Holden with 17 for 187 and 3 touchdowns. So obviously the main target that Nix goes to is Franklin, but he also goes to the other 3 guys as well, and it provides a very versatile passing attack that isn't quite up to par with the Huskies, but that's because Washington's been playing at just an unreal level. Again, they're number 1 in the nation in passing yards per game. That's with quarterback Michael Penix Jr., who's really, going into the season, he was like a dark horse, fringe Heisman contender. Probably a little bit more attention from people who were watching him, maybe in the Pac-12's region over there on the Pacific Coast. But he's emerged. He's put together some really good games this season. He's thrown for literally a single yard short of 2,000 yards already, 1,999, 16 touchdowns, and like Nix, very efficient with the ball, very clean, making the smart reads. Just a couple of interceptions thrown this season. His leading receiver is Rome Odunze, who has 32 catches for 608 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jalen Polk has 26 catches for 408 and 4 yards for an average of 18 yards per catch. Jalen McMillan, 20 for 31 and 3. And Jeremy Bernard with 17 for 231 and 1. And they also, the Huskies, utilize their tight ends a lot too. You've got Josh Cuevas with 3 receptions for 145 yards, which is an average of like 48 yards per catch. So he hasn't gotten a lot of targets this year, but when he does, he makes the most of them, and he has a touchdown with those catches as well. And then kind of more of a red zone target, the guy who they go to get into the end zone, is Jack Westover. He has 13 catches for 125 yards and 4 touchdowns. So when you're watching this game on Saturday, keep an eye out, especially for Westover, for Penix getting the ball to him, because he's been a target, especially once that ball gets inside the 20. So both of these offenses are extremely high-powered. Both offensive lines have each allowed just a total of 3 sacks the entire season. So they just create the perfect pocket for their quarterbacks, and I think that's what allows them, obviously, to have the numbers in the seasons that they've had. A couple of quarterbacks who are both very firmly in the Heisman race. Probably both are in the top 5 at least, maybe even that top 4 right now. If the season ended today, I believe both could and probably should be headed to New York at this stage in the season. So this is possibly also, too, it's possible the way that the Pac-12 sometimes can kind of cannibalize itself and just everybody beats up on each other. It might end up not playing quite as pivotal of a role into the college football playoff, but this game, we could look back and see this being a Heisman moment for either Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr., whichever quarterback, because this game can come down, I would expect it to be somewhere in the high 30s in points. Because you say something like, oh, it's going to be in the 50s, and then that's the type of game that somehow gets in the 20s. And these defenses are no slouches either. Oregon is among the top 5 or top 10 in the country in a few key areas as well. But the offensive play of both of these quarterbacks is going to be on display. And you can't leave out the running backs either. Bucky Irving for the Ducks, 50 carries for just shy of 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, an average of about 8 yards per carry. Jordan James with 34 for 297 and 7 touchdowns. So he's been kind of their guy that they go to, like Washington's Westover in kind of those goal to go situations. The guy who can kind of punch the ball into the end zone for 6. And then Noah Whittington is another dynamic threat in the backfield, 20 for 146 and 2. And then on the Washington side, when you lead a nation in passing like they do, you don't have to run the ball too often, but the guys that they have, Dylan Johnson and Will Nixon, both of those guys. Dylan has 41 carries for 240 and 4 touchdowns. Nixon has 20 carries for 129 and 1 touchdown. And so, again, both of these offenses will be electrifying in this game. And the advantage, I would say, it helps also being at home. I'm not exactly sure of what the weather forecast is, but it is in Seattle, so you have to expect some sort of drizzle or maybe haziness or something during the game. I'll pop up a graphic of what the game time forecast is looking like at this time as I'm recording Wednesday night, and probably putting up on Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see, if that impacts, because both of these teams do go a little bit more with the pass. Oregon is a little bit more dynamic, but certainly a little bit more pass heavy, and Washington definitely passes the rock more. Again, both teams have really good pass protection, so that shouldn't be a concern. A little bit of, both teams have good guys on the defensive line as well that could provide a little bit of trouble. But really what stands out on defense is Oregon is tied 5th nationally in points per game allowed, I think 11.8, and they're 6th in yards per game allowed. And so the Ducks have been really good defensively, and that showed when they faced Colorado. Obviously completely shut down Shedeur Sanders and the Buffalo's offense. And so that's something to keep an eye on too, because they were able to really slow down a high-powered Colorado passing attack that was obviously limited without Travis Hunter. But that's something that could play a role with a strong Ducks secondary against the Washington receivers, and maybe being able to bat away a couple of Penix passes, or maybe even grab an interception. Either team, turnover battle is always key, but in this one, look for those INTs, because it might take just one interception to really shift the momentum in this game. And so that's kind of the breakdown of this game, but I know that when you talk about a game like this, you have to have a prediction, and you got to stick with it, right or wrong. And so if I had to go with one in this moment right now, and I'm going to stick with this one all the way through, even if there's some sort of late injuries in the next couple of days leading up to Saturday, I'm going to go with the Washington Huskies picking up a big 38-34 win. I think maybe Oregon late has a chance to win the game, and the Huskies are able to get a stop. Maybe they're able to get an interception. I know that kind of goes against what I was saying about the Oregon defense being strong. Washington's had a little bit of ups and downs defensively. I think California kind of had a little bit more momentum against the Huskies defense, and Arizona did a decent job as well. But I do think at the end of this one, I think Penix really does what it takes to get the job done. And at the same time, it's possible that he throws a late touchdown pass to give the Huskies the win. And so that's my breakdown of the Washington-Oregon game. A couple other games that I just jotted down to keep an eye on. USC again at Notre Dame. The Trojans are undefeated. They've looked shaky at times, so it'll be interesting to see how they do in South Bend against an Irish team that's faced 3 straight opponents, 2 straight road games, and now host a Trojans team that's trying to pick up a little bit of momentum and make maybe a little bit of a leap in the rankings. Miami, after that horrible collapse last week, goes into North Carolina, into Chapel Hill to face the Tar Heels. Tar Heels are playing really well. Drake May, another Heisman candidate at quarterback for the Tar Heels, 5-0. They're looking good. Them and Louisville are probably the teams, 2 and 3 behind Florida State in the conference. Duke's still there as well. That loss to Notre Dame doesn't diminish what the Blue Devils have done. And then UCLA, Oregon State is also a game between 2 one-loss teams in the Pac-12. And Missouri against Kentucky, 2 teams that are 5-1. I don't think either one of these teams, Kentucky's already lost to Georgia. I don't think Missouri's able to pull an upset in Athens this year. And there's no prize for second place in the SEC East. But if you want to see a good game, I think you might want to tune into this one. It's in Lexington, Kentucky. And both teams looking to bounce back after losses last week to ranked opponents. But that's it for kind of a preview of this upcoming weekend. Let me know your comments on just this game coming up between Oregon and Washington. Let me know your predictions for the game. And again, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, this is Peter Burnett, College Football Talk, signing out. Peace.